Listen, really listen, because what I'm about to say is something most men never discover until life forces them to learn it the hard way. There is a silent moment, a sacred breaking point, where a man who once gave, once tried, once stayed longer than he should have, finally becomes still. It's not rage, it's not bitterness, it's not revenge. It's something far stronger, far colder, far more unforgettable. Indifference. And that indifference, that quiet withdrawal of your emotional energy, hurts more than any goodbye ever could. A goodbye still cares enough to speak. A goodbye still reaches for closure. A goodbye still gives the other person a chance to respond. But your indifference, your calm, unshakable stillness, that is a mirror she cannot escape, because it forces her to confront one truth. She no longer has access to the parts of you she took for granted. And here's the part nobody warns her about, and nobody warns you about either. A stoic man's heart doesn't slam shut. It fades like the last embers of a dying fire, quietly, slowly, beautifully, until the warmth she felt so secure in is just gone. No announcement, no speech, no dramatic exit, just the absence of your presence, the absence of your effort, the absence of your emotional oxygen. And when she realizes that, when she feels your silence after being so used to your attention, that's when the panic starts. That's when the regret sets in. That's when the memory of you becomes heavier than anything you ever said out loud. Because your indifference isn't empty, it's full of the strength she never thought you had. So before we go further, if you've ever reached that point where your peace mattered more than her validation, if you've ever walked away not because you wanted to, but because your soul needed space, then make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications to become a Stoic soldier. And drop this in the comments so the universe hears you clearly. I choose peace over chaos. Now, let's begin the journey into why your indifference became the one thing she never saw coming, and the one thing she'll never forget. There's a very specific moment, subtle, almost invisible, when she feels the ground beneath her shift. It's not announced. You don't warn her. You don't threaten her. You don't make some dramatic declaration. Nope, you simply change your energy. You stop responding with the same warmth. You stop explaining yourself every time she pulls away. You stop giving unlimited chances to someone who barely offered you one. And it's quiet. So quiet she doesn't notice it at first. But women feel energy long before they understand it. They sense when the emotional current they've grown comfortable swimming in suddenly becomes still. She feels it when your messages lose the urgency they once had. She feels it when your tone becomes steady instead of eager. She feels it when you no longer lean forward, emotionally, but instead lean back into your own life, your own mission, your own center. And this shift, this subtle withdrawal, it does something to her pride. At first, she'll tell herself you're just busy. She'll tell herself you're distracted. She'll tell herself you're tired. But deep down, something inside her tightens. Something whispers, he's slipping. See, women don't panic when you argue. They don't panic when you express frustration. They don't panic when you try to fix things. All of those reactions still mean she holds emotional power. But a stoic man's indifference, a stoic man grounding himself, a stoic man turning inward instead of chasing outward, that shakes her, because it signals something far more dangerous than anger. It signals the loss of interest. A man who is indifferent is a man she can no longer predict, a man she can no longer control, a man she can no longer validate herself through. The shift isn't loud, but its impact is seismic. She feels you disconnecting from the emotional thread she thought would always tie you to her. And suddenly, she's not as confident as she once was. Suddenly, She's watching you a little closer. Suddenly, your silence becomes louder than her words. This is when she first realizes something in you has changed, and it's not coming back. Here's the part that hits the deepest, and it hits her in a place no goodbye ever could. Rejection is clear. Rejection is loud. Rejection gives someone something to push against. It gives them a storyline, a reason, a villain, an excuse. But indifference, you're calm, steady, grounded, I'm focusing on myself now energy. That gives her nothing to hold on to, nothing to argue with, nothing to fight for. It's the ultimate psychological curveball. Because when you reject someone, you're still acknowledging them. You're still giving them emotional attention, even if it's negative. But when you become indifferent, truly indifferent, you remove the emotional oxygen from the room. You remove the power she once held. And suddenly, she's not dealing with a man who's mad. She's dealing with a man who has moved on internally. And that is far more terrifying. Indifference stings because it exposes something she never wanted to face. She never thought she could lose you. She counted on your consistency. She counted on your forgiveness. She counted on the way you used to bend, stretch, compromise, adjust. She assumed your heart was a revolving door. She assumed you'd always be emotionally available. But the moment you stop needing her validation, the moment you stop chasing the highs and lows, the moment you stop making her the center of your decision-making, she realizes something profound. She wasn't as secure in your attachment as she thought. And that hits the ego harder than any harsh word ever could. Indifference hurts because it makes her confront the truth that she never had full control. She only had the illusion of it. It forces her to see that the emotional power she believed she held over you was borrowed, not owned. And the moment you withdrew it, the dynamic flipped completely. Your calmness becomes unsettling. Your silence becomes loud. Your distance becomes magnetic, because now she's not just missing your presence, she's missing the version of herself she used to feel like when she had access to you. That's why your indifference lands like a punch to the soul. It's not that you're punishing her, it's that you're finally free. There is a moment, quiet, almost eerie, when she finally understands the truth she never thought she'd have to face. You don't need her anymore. Not her attention, not her reassurance, not her approval, not her validation. And this hits her harder than anything you could have ever said, because from the very beginning, she subconsciously relied on one thing, your emotional investment. She knew you cared, she knew you tried, she knew you showed up fully, even on days she didn't. And she built a sense of safety around that, a sense of control, a sense of confidence. But when your energy shifts and you stop orbiting around her, the entire structure collapses. You see, a Stoic man's love is steady, rare, and powerful. But once it's withdrawn, it's almost impossible to get back. Not because you're punishing her, nope, but because you have finally reclaimed your center. You've stepped out of that emotional battlefield and into a place of internal sovereignty. She notices the change when you no longer react the way you used to, when you no longer seek her affection as a form of validation, when you stop asking questions like, "Are you okay?" and instead start living your life as if the answer no longer dictates your mood. She feels it when you stop needing to be chosen, because you finally chose yourself. And this is where the regret begins to bloom. Because now she realizes something she didn't see when she had your attention. You were the stability in her inconsistency. You were the anchor in her chaos. You were the certainty in her emotional storms. Without your validation, she doesn't feel the same. Something feels off. Something feels missing. You were her emotional mirror, reflecting a version of herself she liked. And when you withdraw that reflection, she's left staring at her own unfiltered truth. That's why your indifference hits so hard. It's not the loss of you. It's the loss of the version of her she could only access through you. And once she realizes you're not coming back to validate her again, she starts to understand the depth of what she took for granted. One of the most devastating moves a Stoic man can make is also the quietest. You walk away without explaining, without broadcasting, without declaring some dramatic exit. You don't give a speech. You don't list your reasons. You don't demand her to understand where you're coming from. Nope. You simply let your presence fade, like a warrior sheathed his sword and stepped out of the battlefield without a sound. And this is what shakes her to her core, because people expect noise when someone leaves. They expect anger, confrontation, or at least a final conversation to cling to. But you gave her none of that. You walked away with dignity, clarity, and emotional discipline. And that silence carries more weight than any goodbye ever could. Why does it hurt her so deeply? Because a silent departure shows one thing no emotional explosion ever could. You were done long before she realized it. Your heart didn't break suddenly. It detached quietly over time, and she never noticed. While she was caught up in games, inconsistencies, mixed signals, and ego battles, you were slowly pulling your spirit out of the equation. You were observing, you were learning, you were accepting reality instead of fighting it. And when your acceptance finally became complete, you didn't need a final moment. You were already gone internally. This is the kind of walkaway that replays in her mind for months, maybe years. She'll wonder when exactly you stopped caring. She'll search for the moment your heart shifted. She'll go over every interaction trying to locate the last time you were fully there, but there's no answer. Because the moment wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, it wasn't dramatic, it was peaceful. And that peace haunts her. Because peace means certainty, peace means decision, peace means you weighed your worth against the situation and walked. And here's the deepest truth of all. A man who leaves quietly is a man who has already healed himself enough to not need closure. And that makes you unforgettable, because she won't remember the arguments, the tension, or the confusion. She will remember the silence. She will remember the absence. She will remember the day she realized the door didn't slam. It just stopped opening. Here's where everything shifts, and this is the part she never expected. When your energy disappears, when your presence no longer revolves around her, when your emotional warmth is no longer something she can depend on, she is forced to face herself, and that's the most uncomfortable place for anyone to stand. Your indifference becomes a mirror, a cold, unfiltered reflection of the truth she tried to avoid. Suddenly, she can't distract herself with your attention, your support, or your attempts to fix things. Suddenly, there's no emotional cushion softening the weight of her own behavior. Without your presence, without your validation, without your emotional investment filling the room, she has no choice but to see who she was in the dynamic. She sees the messages she left unanswered. She sees the efforts she brushed off. She sees the cold moments she justified with excuses. She sees the ways she pushed you away while expecting you to stay. All of it comes back, not as memories, but as clarity. And that clarity is uncomfortable, almost painful, because it reveals something her ego tried to hide. She misplayed the one man who wasn't playing a game. Your stoic silence exposes the truth she didn't want to face, that she had more power than she knew, and she used it without wisdom. And now that your energy is gone, she's confronted with the imbalance she helped create. Your indifference forces introspection. It forces accountability. It forces her to question why she needed control in the first place. Why she pushed away the man she secretly wanted to keep. Why she felt safer testing your love than receiving it. And this is where the emotional tables completely turn, because now she feels what you once felt: the uncertainty, the confusion, the distance, the disconnect. She feels all the things she assumed only you would experience. And the most haunting realization hits her. You didn't pull away because you were weak. You pulled away because you grew stronger. Your silence didn't punish her. It revealed her. Your indifference didn't disrespect her. It awakened her. Your distance didn't kill the connection. It showed her who was really holding it together the entire time. And that's the moment she begins to understand the depth of the loss. Not just losing you, but losing the version of herself she could only be when she had access to a man of your emotional strength. Once she feels the full weight of your absence, once she recognizes the mirror your indifference forced her to stare into, the natural instinct begins. She tries to pull you back, not always directly, not always with a confession or an apology, but with subtle signals, little tests, familiar patterns she hopes will reel your attention into her orbit again. Maybe she sends a casual message out of nowhere. Maybe she likes a post she once ignored. Maybe she brings up a memory she never valued before. Or maybe she simply reappears with a softness you never saw from her when you were giving your all. These are the breadcrumbs she throws when she realizes she lost the version of you who once tried. But here's what changes everything. You don't react the same. You don't jump. You don't rush. You don't cling to the scraps of effort you used to beg for. Nope. Because now you're operating from emotional mastery, not emotional hunger. And she feels that difference instantly. Your responses become calm, measured, intentional, not cold, just centered. The very energy she used to take for granted now becomes the energy she's trying to chase. And it's not that you're playing hard to get. It's not a tactic. It's not manipulation. It's simply that you are no longer moved by the bare minimum. And this is where her confusion grows, because she expected you to fold quickly. She expected you to come running the moment she threw you a hint. That's the version of you she remembers. The man who held hope in his hands even when she offered uncertainty. But that man isn't here anymore. The man she's dealing with now is rebuilt, grounded, stoic, at peace. And she doesn't know how to navigate this version of you. She'll test you to see if your indifference is real. She'll try to trigger the old emotional responses. She'll try to pull you back into the dynamic where she felt powerful. But every time she tries, she runs into your new state of being. The man who doesn't fall for old cycles, the man who doesn't chase, the man who doesn't lose himself to win someone else. And that shift destabilizes her, because now she's experiencing the very thing she made you feel: uncertainty. Your groundedness becomes magnetic. Your calmness becomes intimidating. Your lack of neediness becomes irresistible. She didn't want to lose you. She wanted to feel chosen without choosing you back. But now she realizes you are no longer waiting to be chosen at all. This is the part she'll never admit to your face, but it always happens behind the scenes. Because when a stoic man goes silent, when your indifference becomes steady and unshakable, she can't keep it to herself. She starts talking about you, not out of confidence, but out of confusion, out of curiosity, out of regret she doesn't fully understand yet. She'll bring you up to her friends in small, subtle ways at first. A name mentioned here, a story there, a random comment like, "It's weird, he hasn't hit me up lately," or "He's acting different," or "I don't know what happened, but he seems so distant now." And her friends, the ones who saw how invested you once were, will look at her with raised eyebrows because they remember everything she didn't take seriously. And when her friends hear the shift in her tone, when they sense that uncertainty in her voice, they know what's really going on. She's thinking about you more than she wants to. They might tease her, they might question her, they might even remind her of what she had or what she lost. But the truth is, the moment she starts talking about you again, you become a topic of fascination, because your transformation is noticeable. The guy who once cared too much now moves like a man who owes nothing to anyone. The man she once thought she had wrapped around her finger now feels untouchable. And trust me, women know exactly how rare that shift is. Behind closed doors, she might say things like, "He used to be so into me. Now I can't tell what he feels. He doesn't text me first anymore. It's weird. He seems happier, like he doesn't care I'm gone. He looks better. He's been leveling up." Or the one that reveals everything. "I think he's over me." But what she's really saying beneath all that small talk is, "How did he detach from me? How did he move on without me noticing? Why doesn't he need me anymore?" Her friends will give advice, some supportive, some dismissive, some jealous, but none of it stops that quiet ache from growing inside her. Because for the first time, she feels something she never felt when she believed she had your heart. She feels replaceable, meaning she knows deep down that you are becoming a version of yourself other women will notice. She senses your rising value. She senses your elevation. She senses that another woman will appreciate what she mishandled, and that terrifies her. Your indifference didn't just change the dynamic between you and her. It changed the way she talks about you, thinks about you, and remembers you, because now she speaks of you the way people speak of someone they underestimated and deeply regret losing. This is the part that stings the most. Not because you're doing anything to hurt her, but because you finally became the version of yourself she never imagined you'd grow into. See, when she had you, she got used to a man who cared deeply, who forgave quickly, who tried sincerely, who showed up even when she gave you uncertainty. She thought your softness was weakness. She mistook your loyalty for dependability. She misread your patience as a lack of options. But once you turned inward, once you embraced your own path, once you decided that peace was more valuable than proximity, everything changed. You evolved, quietly, powerfully, effortlessly. You start focusing on your mission again, your health, your goals, your discipline, your mind, your craft. Your posture changes, your tone changes, your habits change. You walk differently, talk differently, move differently. You start attracting opportunities, attention, admiration, not because you sought it, but because you removed yourself from chaos long enough to rediscover your worth. This transformation unsettles her at a level she can't express, because now she sees you as the man she always wanted, but no longer has access to. What really cuts deep is this. She always assumed you'd be there. She thought she had time. She thought she had emotional security. She thought she could push you away today and pull you back tomorrow. But your growth exposes that lie. Your indifference shows her that the man she took for granted became the man other women pray for. The man she thought she could replace is now the man she silently compares everyone else to. The man she thought she had figured out now feels like a mystery she can't decode anymore. Your transformation is the one thing she cannot ignore, because it shows her exactly who you were underneath all the ways she dimmed you. And deep down, she knows this truth. You didn't become better because of her. You became better because you finally stopped abandoning yourself for her. And here's the twist. The very traits that make you magnetic now, they were always inside you. She just never wanted you to realize your own value, because the moment you did, she knew the dynamic would shift forever. And now, it has. Your indifference wasn't just distance. It was rebirth. Your silence wasn't empty. It was evolution. Your withdrawal wasn't a loss. It was the beginning of your ascension into the man you were meant to be. And now we arrive at the final truth, the one she feels long after the messages stop, long after the tension fades, long after the story between you two quietly dissolves into memory. There is a kind of goodbye that doesn't need to be spoken, a goodbye that doesn't slam doors or echo through arguments, a goodbye that isn't written in anger, but written in evolution. It's the goodbye of a stoic man who outgrew the version of himself that tolerated uncertainty, disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional games. It's the goodbye you never said out loud, because you didn't need to. You lived it. You embodied it. You became it. Your indifference was your farewell. Your silence was your closure. Your peace was your final word. And she felt that goodbye in a way she never expected, not all at once, but slowly, like a realization sinking deeper each day. She'll remember the way you once showed up, the way you once cared, the way you once gave without holding back. And she'll remember the moment that energy disappeared. Not because you wanted to punish her, nope, but because you finally understood the cost of abandoning your own soul just to stay close to someone who didn't value it. The truth is, the most powerful goodbye is the one that doesn't come wrapped in emotion, the one delivered through a man's discipline, self-respect, and acceptance. You didn't leave to hurt her. You left to heal yourself. You didn't walk away to provoke regret. You walked away because the version of you she knew no longer fit inside the man you're becoming. And here's the most poetic part. The man she took for granted became the man she can't replace. That's the legacy of your indifference. That's the weight of your silence. That's the echo of a stoic goodbye. So if this message resonated with you, if you've walked this road, or you're walking it right now, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications to become a stoic soldier so you never miss another lesson like this. Drop a final comment saying, "I choose myself, now and always." Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and remember, your silence has power, your peace has value, and your indifference is often the moment you finally find yourself again.